Believe I want to. Okay, we're being recorded. Got it. I want to make sure that you understand what part of the process we're going to go through tonight. So we're going to start off with a closing preparation checklist. This is the part of the process where you have already got the house under contract. You are going to buy it. I'm assuming you're going to flip it. Maybe you're going to rent it. And these are the steps that you should go through during that closing process. This is not, so you've already run your numbers. I did a presentation on that for new investors last month. You've already figured out what your scope is. If you don't know how to do that, I mean, your comps, if you don't know how to do that, you should go to new investors this month. But in this reality right now, congratulations, you've run your numbers, you've put in an offer, you've already done your inspections, and you are in countdown mode to closing. And click. The objective, I can't see the objective because people are in my way, hold on, is to gain an understanding of all the tasks that need to be completed prior to closing on both the buying and the selling side. So this is my buying checklist. And I did go ahead and send it to everybody. Usually I don't share documents because I'm a huge believer that you should build them in order to understand them. But the checklists I think are a little bit different. So my early present, holiday present, Christmas present to you guys is I'm sharing my documents with you today. So the first thing that you should do once you have a house under contract and you are preparing to sell it, to buy it, is to send the offer to purchase to the attorney and schedule the closing. And that will kick off the title search. It'll kick off all the events that need to happen in order for you to have a successful closing. I do have a note here that if it's a foreclosure situation, and actually if you're buying it from auction, there are certain circumstances where you may want to put a rush order on the title search. You may want to do it in advance of actually putting it under contract. But the closing process itself does run a title search, because the person that you are buying the property from, one of the criteria is that they need to be able to turn over a clean title. Second thing on the list is the insurance binder. Don't delay on this. Sometimes insurance can delay a closing. Call your insurance broker. I happen to use NREIG is mine, but get insurance on the property that you are purchasing. And make sure if you have a lender, whether it is a traditional lender or a private money lender or a hard money lender, that lender's name is on the policy as the additional insured. For the third step in the process is city input. And guys, I'll be honest, depending on if I am buying off of the MLS or if I'm buying, which I typically don't do. Normally when I purchase a property, it's myself dealing directly with the homeowner. I always call the city. And I try to do it before it actually goes under contract, but it's not always possible. A lot of times I am doing it during the closing process, but I'll call the municipality. I'll talk to the planning department, and it is a quick phone call, but I just want to check to see if there's any outstanding issues with the property that would prevent me from doing what I want to do with it. And I'll be honest, there have been 3 situations in the last 3 years that have caused me to walk away from a property. And it's been a simple phone call to the city in one circumstance, and it was a property in Cary, when we went down and talked to the people in the planning department. The guy behind the desk said, "I'm so glad that you came. You can't do, nothing can be done with this property. This property there were significant issues, and we walked away and didn't buy the house. And we actually felt very bad for the people that did, because it's a property that the city probably should have bought and just at the house leveled and turned into a park. There was another situation when we called the city and the existing sewer, the existing septic tank, which had been, which was no longer working, the city had actually deemed it non-fixable. So there was something on record saying when that septic tank failed, it can't be replaced, which really renders the house unusable. So there's really good reasons. It doesn't take very long. Sometimes, and the vast majority of the time when you call the municipality, they'll be like, yeah, no, we're not aware of it. But you're really looking for those opportunities when they say, oh, we know that house. When they know that house, something's going on. So quick phone call. If you're buying a condo or an HOA, then call the property management company and make sure you have a copy of the restrictions and the condo documents and read through them before you close. You need to understand what you're signing up for and what restrictions they may have on what you may do to the property. And you also want to take a look and make sure that you understand what the HOA will pay for. Many times, if it's a condo or a townhouse, the condo will pay, the HOA will actually pay for the exterior repairs. So don't be spending money that you don't need to. Obviously, you want to make sure that you have called the utility companies and that you change the bill over into, I say company name because I always buy in a company name. If you're buying in your personal name, it would be your personal name. But you want to make that phone call to the water company, the sewer company, the gas company, the oil company, the electric company, and say, hey, I'm buying this property. I'm closing. My expected closing date is August 31st. This is my company name on this date. The account should be switched over to me and it should be closed out and no longer billed to the previous owner. There is a note on the oil company to make sure there's enough oil to last 3 months. I had a property in Lewisburg and the heat is serviced by propane, big, huge propane tank. And it can be very expensive. And it's also expensive to call them out there and fill it up. And really what you want to make sure of is that your renovation, you want to hit the ground running after closing, isn't held up because you don't have utility service. And obviously, if you were buying a house or purchasing a property that did not have the utilities on, hopefully you turned them on in order to get your inspections done. Now we're going to move to the mortgage section. So think about this. You've contacted the closing attorney. And so you have got your closing date on the books. Depending on how you're paying for the property, there's different things that you need to be able to make sure that you're staying on top of. If it's a traditional mortgage and you're buying it through a traditional bank, the bank is going to reach out to that attorney. They're going to be sending them a lot of information. So at this point, you're really in contact with your mortgage broker, making sure that you have a firm understanding of anything that is required that you need to turn over in order to get that loan commitment and get it approved for closing. And I will tell you, it doesn't matter how organized you are, these things always come down to like the last 24, 48 hours, something gets missed and you'll get a phone call and it'll be like, oh, I just had one a week ago and, everything was said. And then it was 24 hours before closing and the mortgage company called and said, we didn't realize that you incorporated in Nevada. And we normally get, documentation from the state, but Nevada says I think it was the articles of incorporation they wanted. And Nevada says it'll take 5 days. And I was like, you know what? You don't have to worry because I send it to you, but constantly follow up. I typically follow up at least once a week to say, you know, is everything good? I'm going to stop. I'm getting a note that my internet is not stable. Kathy or Leslie, I can't see you guys. Can you still hear me?
I'm hearing you just fine, Jack. No problems.
Yeah,
Okay.
you are kind of freezing a little bit, Jack.
Okay, well,
I'm hearing you
Now-
just, hon.
okay. If it gets bad, let me know.
Yeah, no problem on
If
my
you-
end. I've got you.
Are we good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, sorry, guys, it's not even stormy here, but sometimes the internet just acts up. If you are if you're funding it with a private money lender or a hard money lender, then you want to make sure that the attorney's office is aware of the terms of the agreement. So that's a little different. Traditional mortgage you know, you're going through Bank of America or Four Oaks or United Bank, you know, they have their own process that they follow. If it's private, especially if it's private money, it's a little bit different. So make sure that your attorney's office knows the terms of the agreement, stay in contact with your private and your hard money lender. Make sure that the attorney's office knows who'll be sending the money over if it's private, who the hard money lenders are. If the private money lender does not have their own documents, and that happens sometimes, if it's a new private money lender, somebody that doesn't do this very often, but they're loaning on your project, then make sure that the attorney drafts the promissory note and the deed. And you want to walk through that with your private money lender to review it. You want to make sure that document really outlines all the criteria that you agreed to and that they understand. So there's a little bit more involved if it's private, just to protect the interest of your lenders. Hard money lenders usually have their own process, but some are just a little softer than others. So at the end of the day, make sure that the attorney, especially if you're using one that isn't like Kathy, that knows the investor terms and language, you know, like the back of a hand. If you're using a traditional attorney that normally does traditional loans, they may be very confused by a private money lender. So you want to make sure that they're aware as well of all those details. Call your private investors for the project and make sure that they have the attorney information and the closing date. So if it's a private money lender, and again, this could be somebody that is loaning money to you because they took out a home equity loan, and maybe they took out that home equity loan for 4% and you're going to be giving them 10%. So it's a good deal for them, but they don't do it very often. Make sure that they have the attorney information, the closing date, and that they are in contact with the to get the wiring information. I personally never, ever hand over wire information. I'm really strict because there's a lot of wire fraud. My private money lenders need to contact the attorney directly. They need to confirm it with them over the phone. And the only thing that I ask is that they confirm with me once they've wired the funds. And that way that I know the funds are there and waiting at the closing office, so that we can go ahead and close on time. And if it's a situation where your company is funding it, you know, same thing. You're doing a million things. Don't forget to wire your own funds and make sure that they are available the day of closing. Business documents, some of this gets added, guys, because it's potentially delayed closings in the past. And the example that I just gave about the articles of incorporation, where I got the phone call, you know, it was like, oh, I didn't realize you were in Nevada. Different mortgage brokers require different documentation. So make sure that you understand exactly what's required, and just double check if there's anything that you need to bring to closing. You know, some brokers, some lenders require a certificate of good standing. Others do not. But it can be very difficult to turn things around like in an hour if you have to. So know what business documents you need to bring. Change of management. If you happen to be in a situation where you're purchasing a rental, and then, you know, send out a letter. And I think Chris, I haven't done apartments. I don't know if you guys saw Chris Papadopoulos at Experience. He's doing apartments right now. But if you have tenants in a house that you're purchasing, make sure that they know that there's a change in management, that now you are going to be the homeowner, and have them fill out an application for you, especially if you are planning on keeping them in that house. So you just want to keep the communication open and make sure everybody is on the same page. Over communicate rather than under communicate. You're going to hear me, I talk about staying in contact with the closing attorneys a lot because I do. And I think it's, you know, the closing attorneys have lots of closings on their plate, and timing is everything. So it doesn't take very long, but I'll just shoot an email. It's not to bug them, or get to know the paralegal at the attorney's office and say, hey, here's my direct sale. Please let me know if you've gotten everything that you need. And a lot of times I'll ask about the mortgage. You know, have you heard from the mortgage broker? Have they wired the funds in advance? Do you know if they require, you know, what are they waiting for? So just make sure that you have an understanding of what is required. Check the preliminary HUD against the closing attorney's final HUD. So it can be a HUD, it could be an alter, it just really depends on how you're buying the property, but make sure that you are reviewing that statement in advance of closing, and that all the figures are what you assumed they would be. So you'll have a preliminary and you'll have a final, and make sure that you understand it and that it matches your expectations. It doesn't happen as often anymore, but I can say probably 30% of the time, I will find an error that I have to go back and I have to correct. So now you've had all this paperwork going back and forth. You're in your closing mode. It is the day before closing. You're going to buy this property. You're going to do the greatest rehab of your life. But there are still a couple of things that you want to make sure that have happened. Get a copy of the insurance binder if you haven't. And sometimes, you know, we'll close in 10 days. So these things are happening very, very quickly from the time that you call and say, hey, I need insurance. But make sure that you've got it on file, and that it does include the lender information. And the reason that is so critical is as soon as you close, you own that property. You need to make sure it's insured. You need to protect your lenders. And if you're buying it with cash, you need to protect yourself. So make sure that you have insurance from the time that that it gets recorded. And then again, check over the draft of the closing HUD. Make sure the numbers are what you thought they were supposed to be. If it's a short sale, I haven't done a short sale, but not enough people tell me, make sure that if it's a short sale, it agrees with the preliminary HUD that was sent to the bank. The day of closing, and it depends on the day. It could be the day before if it's a morning closing. You want to do your final walkthrough, do a final inspection of the property the morning of closing or the night before to make sure there is no additional damage. You know, I've purchased a lot of properties off market, so I'm working directly with the homeowners, and a lot of times I've developed a relationship, but I'm still getting eyes on that property before I close on it. You just want to make sure that nothing substantial has changed. And I would say it is even more critical in property that was a rental. And if the agreement was that the tenants had to move out, you don't really know what that relationship was with the tenants. So you don't know if you had angry people that decided on the way out, let's just rip out all the piping in this house. Get eyes on it. Just protect yourself, protect the lenders. Coordinate the closing time with the seller and the attorney ahead of time. I typically, because I've purchased so many that are off market, you know, I'll go to the closing with the seller, with the person that I'm buying the property from. And you just want to make sure that schedules haven't changed. And then when all is said and done, get copies of all the closing docs and make sure that you save them. I have a closing folder. I save everything. I save everything to my closing folder. I also save things to the drive. I have a three-way process, but you want to make sure that you've got all the documentation and do it right away, because if you let too much time go by, you'll forget about it. And you want to make sure that you've got a good historical record of exactly what transpired during the closing process. After you have closed, so you've gotten the notification that that it is recorded, so you now own the house. Send a note if you're working with a private money lender, and especially if it's one that is new, that you're working with for the first time, but I do this regardless. You know, send your private money lender a note, confirm with them that you've closed, thank them for partnering with you on the project because they gave you the money to do this great deal, and then just let them know how and when you'll be providing project updates. Hopefully you talked about it ahead of time. But with private money lenders, even though they are getting a good interest rate, you're also working with people that have taken money out of their retirement accounts and they're entrusting it with you. And you don't ever want to lose sight of that. They are your partners. They may be silent partners, and they should be silent partners. They should stay in their lane. But you should always reach out and let them know the status of a project. You don't ever want a private money lender sending a note to you saying, I haven't heard anything in a long time, what's going on? So always send them a note. And then get a copy of the title insurance policy. The lawyers will, it'll come in the mail, but I do quicker flips, or I like to, 3 months closing to closing, and I'll just send a note saying, hey, can I just get a copy of it? And then you file it so that you've got it. And that I'm going to stop the screen share just for a second, is the closing process when you're buying a property. Do you guys have any questions on that checklist? And then we'll go on to the next one. And if you do, put it in chat, because I can see chat now. Nope, everybody's good. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing and we'll go on the selling side. Before I get, so switch gears with me now. You've bought the property, you've rehabbed the property. Hopefully you did a great job. And now you are getting ready to put it for sale. And this is the exciting part, right, David? This is when it all comes together and you're like, please, 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 please. All right, let me share the screen again and we'll go to that part of the process. Selling checklist. Okay. This is when hopefully you get paid for a job well done. Hold on. So I start this with the property side of the equation. I have finished my rehab. And whenever you finish a rehab, I always say it's like the last, what should be a week of renovating a house can turn into 2.5 weeks. I don't know why it takes so long for the final punch list to be completed, but it always seems to. But you want to make sure that your final punch list has been completed. And your final punch list, if you haven't done a renovation before, is everything on your scope has been done. And then you've walked the house and you've sort of made a list of, oh, we still, this touch up needs to be done. You take the blue painter's tape and you're putting, you're marking the areas where you need to do touch up. And it's just all the little final tasks that need to be completed. And so you've walked through it and you're satisfied. You're like, yes, this house is ready. You've confirmed the measurements. I do it early on in the process, but you certainly need it prior to listing it on the MLS. So make sure that your house has been professionally measured. Make sure you clean the property. I know that just when you renovate, almost everything is new, but construction it creates a lot of dust, and just get your property clean. And then I stage, so that's certainly up to the individual, but I certainly do stage. So this is final punch list, measurements have been confirmed, property's been cleaned, and it's staged. And now I am ready to get it in the MLS. I always reanalyze the comps. On the new investors meeting, which I think is tomorrow night, Karen will be going out. We'll be going over how to run comps if you don't know how to do it. But I always reanalyze my comps to make sure that I know. To confirm the listed price. I monitor comps throughout my projects. I'm always looking at what's been listed for sale in the area, but you want to do that exercise one last time and then confirm what you're going to list the house for. Put in a lockbox if you don't have one already. Put up your for sale sign. I switch out my for sale signs when I'm rehabbing. I have for sale by 3 Key Properties, which is my company name, because I may sell it by owner. But if I haven't, or I've decided not to, the sale sign that goes up at this stage is my broker's sign. I typically sell my own properties, but I have my realtor's hat on, so it's a different sign, it's a different company. Take property photos. You can either get them done professionally, which I highly recommend. It's not that expensive if you're not a really good photographer. And then write up the property details. If you are working with an agent, they're going to need that anyway. So go ahead and write up the property details of what you've done, what you like about the property. You're getting it ready for listing. Schedule an open house if you're going to have one. Go ahead and get that on the schedule. Complete your seller disclosures. So just like when you're buying a house, your seller should have done this, but there are disclosure documents that you're required to turn over to the buyer when you're selling a house. And that's a property disclosure sheet. A lot of us call it the no representation sheet because it asks a lot of questions about the properties that you have to answer if there's an issue that you either choose not to answer, or you choose to answer, or you can say no representation. But it is required. There's also, depending on the age of the house, you may have to fill out a lead disclosure form, and you've got to fill out a mineral rights form. So these are disclosures that will have to be typically inputted into the MLS system so that the agents will be able to pull them down and take a look at it. And I always get that done before we actually go live in the system. I gather warranty information. So when you are renovating the house, depending upon what you've done that comes with a warranty, you're going to want to pass that over to whoever buys your house. So I'll keep it in a folder, but I'll gather it at the end. And this could be certainly always appliances because they're always new. I also include HVAC if I replace the HVAC system, if I replace the roof and I use the traditional roofing company. So you just want to make sure that you've got all the warranty information together. I create a list of improvements. What did I do to the house? These are all selling points, and you want to be able to have easy access. You want to say, I replaced the kitchen cabinets, I put granite cabinets in. I replaced the old tub shower and I did a walk-in shower. So just make that list. And when you're doing it, you're really doing it for a couple of different reasons. But the biggest one at this stage for me is it's not so much for the agent, it's not so much for the future buyer, because they can walk through the house and hopefully they'll have a little bit of that wow factor. But I try very hard to make contact with who the appraiser is going to be. And I always want that list of improvements at the ready, because I want them to be aware of what I've done to the house. It does help. And once I've got all those documents together, and it doesn't take very long if you keep good records throughout the project, and you list it for sale. And within hours in this market, sometimes the offer is accepted. So now you have you've accepted an offer to purchase, you're super excited. You start the closing process on the selling end. Typically, you ask for a due diligence deposit, and that can be quite large in this environment. I think the vast majority of people know what a due diligence deposit is, but if you don't, this is something that the buyer will give to the seller, and you get to keep it unless you breach the contract. So it's really, it's an incentive that really tells the seller that the buyer is extremely interested, because if it's a $5,000 due diligence check, if it's a $10,000, sometimes it'll be $30,000. If that seller walks away, if that buyer walks away, I get the buying and selling because we do both. If that buyer walks away and it's not because you breached the contract. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure that if it's not because you breached the contract, then you get to keep that check. I do not typically change the MLS status to pending, it's off the market, until I've deposited that due diligence check. I'll just keep it as active and you want to get it very, very quickly. So now you've got your due diligence check, you've got your offer accepted, the MLS is in a pending status. You're going to work very closely with the buyer's agent. Now, I call it, you go from the honeymoon period where the buyers are just really, and especially in this environment, sometimes fighting and they're bidding and we want your house, we want your house, you want your house. And you're just feeling like, things just can't go wrong. And then everything kind of changes a little bit. The environment changes a bit because it turns into, now the buyers have these tasks that they need to complete. And one is they need to get their house their new house inspected, and they should. So you'll want to coordinate the inspections with the buyer's agent and make sure that they have access. And you want to make sure that they're doing it as early in the process as possible, so that if something does come up, you have time to react to it. The closing attorney, the buyers choose the closing attorney. The closing attorney will reach out to you and they'll send you a seller's information sheet that you have to fill out. Fill it out and get it back to them, and do it as soon as possible, around in 24 hours. It's just, the more information we can get in the hands of the attorney, then the more time they have to work through the closing process. So don't delay on those type of things. I also go ahead and send the title insurance to the closing attorney. And if you remember, when I bought the house, that was a task that I put as a to-do on my list for after I closed. I said, I want to make sure that I get a copy of the title insurance. Well, I do it for this reason. I want to make sure that the buyer's closing attorney has a copy of the title insurance. It'll make the title process go quicker. And I do believe it also saves them a little bit of money. prepare for the appraisal. This is, this is just what I do. So I'm not, appraisers are required to follow a process, but I do find that sometimes it is helpful to make sure that you're comfortable with the price that you listed the house at, and that you can explain how you came to that price. I always maintain a list of comps and improvements, and I do find that when I can talk with an appraiser, it tends to work more in my favor. So I want that information to be ready at my fingertips. And I learned early on, because the very first house that I flipped, I wasn't prepared for the appraiser called me. So it was my first flip. I didn't know that appraisers would call, but I remember it very well because I had certainly listed it high. I felt comfortable that I'd listed it for the right price. And the appraiser gave me 2 properties that were close and said, this is what they sold for. How did you get your price? And I was caught off guard, and I went, well, because mine is better. And they said, excuse me. And I was like, well, I think mine just looked better. And he said, okay. And then the appraisal came back $3,000 less than what I had listed it for. And I do believe that it was in large part because I gave him a stupid answer. I mean, I just wasn't prepared. And I'm very prepared now. I always I'm prepared to talk with appraisers. The due diligence request and agreement. So if you remember, the buyers have scheduled their inspection. So they're getting a home inspection. Hopefully, a lot of times they just get a home inspection. Maybe they're getting a couple of additional inspections. I will give them inspections sometimes, like a WDRI, a wood destroying insect report, because I always do one when I'm buying a house. And I flip them usually so quickly that I'll give them a WDIR. So I'll give them some things in advance, but they will send out their own home inspector. And it doesn't matter how many repairs you've done, how many updates, a home inspector is going to find a list of things that they always do. And the buyer's agent is going to send you that request on a document called a due diligence request and agreement. And you will go through a process of saying, yes, I will make these repairs. No, I won't. I would love to do a session one day on negotiating through the DDRA period, because I've got a lot of strong opinions about it. But at the very end of that process, you should have an agreed upon repair list that you've come to an agreement, and those are things that you need to fix. So you need to make sure that prior to closing, you have completed any repairs that you have said that you will do. Not only that, you need to send confirmation to the buyer's agent. So you send them an email. If you're working with an agent, they'll do it on your behalf, but they'll say, yes, I fix the door that was sticking in the bedroom. And here is the invoice from the contractor that I've paid that proves that I've done it. So you just want to make sure at this stage that you are working through the process. And again, you're over communicating. If you said you would do something, and you should be able to prove that you did it, so just send them the email and get it documented. I always follow up on my buyer's loan process. It's not because I want to be nosy, it's because I've got a lot riding on it. So I'll follow up. A lot of the mortgage companies will automatically loop in the listing agent. And because I list my own houses, a lot of times I'm looped in that way, but it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it goes very quiet. And when that happens, I follow up with the buyer's agent, so with their realtor, and say, can you tell me where are we in the process? How did the appraisal come in? Have they got their loan commitment? Because I want to know if we're staying on task and we're staying on schedule. Then I remove the staging. I do it after the due diligence date has come and gone. And due diligence is like the amount of time that you have given the buyer to do their inspection, to do their due diligence, and to really confirm, okay, yes, I'm ready to buy this house. They can walk away before the due diligence date. And if they put down not the due diligence check, but if they put down earnest money, they will get that earnest money back. You still get the due diligence check. I know it gets a little bit confusing, but it's a big date and it's a date to monitor. Once the due diligence date has passed, I'm pretty confident that we are closing, and I go ahead and remove the staging. Again, this is my process. At this stage, I'll start working on, it's a welcome home packet. I put it's just a small folder that I leave on the countertop for all of my buyers, and it gives them information on the house. Because I'm always thinking that, you know, in the future, they may not, they may have to do some touch-up paint. So yes, I've left them a little bit, but in my welcome home packet, I'll give them all what I consider the critical information that is needed in order for them to be able to maintain the house in the style that I rehabbed it in. So for example, I would tell them, sorry guys, my thing is, phone is buzzing. I'll tell them I'm using a Adley Gray is the paint. So your walls are Adley Gray. This is the how you mix that paint. So I'll give them the mixture. I'll tell them what the ceiling paint is. I'll tell them the trim paint. If I had hardwood floors and I stain them, I tell them what Minwax stain it was. So it's just a listing of information that I think would be valuable to them at some point in time. I also let them know when the trash is picked up, when the recycling goes out. And it's in this home packet that I leave any warranties that I'm going to pass over. So I get that ready after the due diligence date at the point in time that I know I'm going to close. And again, a lot of this is the basic information that we had before, where we are reviewing the preliminary HUD. So that's the statement that lists all the seller's costs, the buyer's costs, and it really tells you how much money you're going to end up with when all is said and done. The buyers will do a final walkthrough, again, the day before or the day of closing. I review the final HUD. I'm a money person, so I'm always going over the numbers. And then we go to the closing table. At the closing table, you sign the papers with the attorney. And then you wait for the attorney to give you confirmation of recording. And once that they've confirmed that it has been recorded, that's when they'll send you a note that says, hey, your check is ready. So that's like payday. That's it's really what you're looking for. Once they've confirmed recording, you no longer own that house. So you are done with it. This project is pretty much finished at that point. Again, I save all the closing documents that we have in my closing folder because you want to maintain those documents. And if you're working with an agent, they will change the MLS status to sold. Remove the signage, you remove the lockbox. I send a thank you note to my private money lenders. Make sure that they're aware that we closed, thank them, and make sure that we're happy with the project. And I ask, are you ready to reinvest this in another one? Verify that the utilities have been switched utilities and companies and say, you know, I no longer own the house. Can you verify that our buyers have switched the account into their names? And every once in a while they'll say no. And then you got to get on the phone with the agent and say the utilities haven't been switched over. So you just want to make sure that it's a clean handover, and then you go on to the next one. So that, in a nutshell, is my checklist.
God, you got a lot of details. You amaze,
Well, the devil is in the
Amazing.
detail. Leslie.
you amaze me.
The devil is in the detail.
It is.
Helen, I
is.
think, did I explain what DDRA is? So the DDRA, Helen, I don't know if you're, if the DDRA is the due diligence request agreement. So when your buyer has their house inspected, they will come up with a list of repairs that they want you to make. They always do. They say, we've
Oh, yeah.
reviewed this list and we want you to take A, B, and C. And that's what a DDR, and when you agree to it, you're agreeing to that DDRA. So it's another negotiation point in the process. Sometimes you say, oh, no. I'm
Feel
sorry,
free
this
to say
house
no.
isn't for you. I'm gonna keep you check. Feel free to walk on down the road.
Yeah.
Um,
Free to say no.
But that's it. Yeah, so I know it's a lot of, I know it's a lot of tasks, guys. It's not a fun topic, but it certainly is a very important topic if you're wanting to get to the closing table and do it as smoothly as possible. Otherwise, you'll be running around like a chicken with your head cut off.
Oh, seriously. It can make your life so much easier if all your ducks are in a row.
If anyone has any other questions, put them in the chat and we'll ask Jackie. Otherwise, we'll wrap
We
up
be done.
here. But what? Yep. We did want to say, since y'all, for those of y'all who hung out to the end, at the beginning, we said that we have some really big things. Stay tuned. There's some exciting things coming on. We're just getting a really, really big one. We can't tell you quite yet. We're going to give you a teaser on another one, which is that we are expanding into Charlotte. And so if you are interested in investing in Charlotte, or if you know anyone who invests in Charlotte, let them know that announcement. You'll be getting an email about it soon, but that's just one of the things that we have going on. So, provide more opportunity, bigger networking area. So we're super excited. We're going to have an inaugural meeting on August 31st. So like I say, it's a great market down there. If y'all are interested, stay tuned. Any other
beans.
questions for Jackie? No, Jackie, you did such a good job. You just taught him
Thanks,
everything.
Amazing.
All right, guys. Go to New Investors on Thursday. Learn how to develop your
And
comps.
really, really, really good pizza.
Yes.
Milton's has really, really, really good pizza. Come on to New Investors tomorrow night so you can hear Karen talk about how to run comps. Everybody needs to do that or you're going to lose yourself some money. You are going to
All
lose
right, guys.
All
Good
right, guys.
night.
Have a good one. Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Good night.
We will see
Thanks.
you in the next one. Bye. Ooh.
Well, I don't know where the hell Griffith went to, but his screen was blank.
I know.
I know.
Oh, guys, that
That guy is so technologically
a
talented.
lot of tests. I know, but we have to think things through. Like when we're doing a 6 to 7, we can't let the announcements run to 6:35.
It's never 6 to 7. It always goes to the 7:30 anyway.
Because we said 6 to 7.
We should just always
Just
say,
some
we
of
should
them
always
thank
say
you
an hour and a
very
half.
Okay.
I
We
agree.
almost never get
Yeah.
a meeting done in an hour.